Prepare $10 million and disappear. If you don't pay, we'll make sure you experience the horrors of the underworld firsthand. As Justin, who seemed to be the leader, spoke, his mafia members surrounded me and Miss Harrington. They must have been using this tactic, overwhelming their target with numbers, to extort money on a regular basis. I could feel Ms. Harrington trembling slightly beside me. Not only was their way of making money disgraceful, but intimidating a woman was utterly pathetic. These kinds of people wouldn't change unless they were taught a painful lesson and sent to a facility for rehabilitation. Justin seemed to have realized that I had no intention of complying with his demands. Rolling his shoulders, he muttered to his men, "Let's take him down all at once." As they moved in on me, I cracked my neck and took a step forward. "My name is Henry. I'm in my 40s and work as a chauffeur for the CEO of an IT company. Ms. Harrington, whom I serve, is a sharp businessperson who founded a startup in her 30s and quickly grew it into a major company. Being a woman, she has had to endure condescension from male seniors and deal with unfair negotiations. Yet she has managed to expand her company, proof enough of her skills, even to someone like me, who isn't well-versed in business. More than anything, she is a person of integrity, treating even mid-career hires like myself with respect and consideration. Naturally, she is well-liked by her employees and maintains strong relationships with business partners. I consider myself lucky to work for someone like her." Massaging my elbow, which still felt stiff from an old injury, I prepared myself for another day of careful driving. "Good morning. Looking forward to working with you today." I greeted Ms. Harrington with a smile, and as always, she returned it. "Good morning. Thanks for coming so early. I have an important business meeting today, so please drive safely as usual and give us plenty of time." Opening the door to the black luxury sedan, I made sure she was comfortably seated before gently closing it. As I settled into the driver's seat and checked the rearview mirror, I saw her immediately open her laptop and start working. Ensuring her safety was a given, but I also made sure to minimize noise and vibrations, so she could focus on her work. She occasionally engaged me in small talk, and when she did, I made sure to keep the conversation light and refreshing. That, too, was part of my job. We were on track to arrive on time, but if we continued at this pace, we might arrive too early, which could inconvenience our hosts. Since Ms. Harrington also mentioned wanting a drink, I decided to stop by a nearby convenience store. I asked her to wait in the car while I went inside to buy her usual black coffee. However, as I returned with the coffee, I was met with an alarming sight. A group of 5 rough-looking men had surrounded the black luxury car where Ms. Harrington was seated. "Excuse me, is something the matter?" As I called out, one of the men, his voice hoarse from years of drinking, responded in a threatening tone. "That's a pretty fancy car. Is it yours? You must have a lot of money." He stepped in close, invading my personal space. His lackeys chuckled, egging him on. "Justin, don't just go swinging right away." So, his name was Justin. I kept my voice calm as I addressed him. "This isn't my car. I'm just a company driver. We're on our way to a business meeting, so if you'll excuse us." I had hoped to settle things peacefully, but of course, that wasn't going to happen. "Hold it," Justin growled, grabbing my arm. With a forceful yank, he pulled me toward him, causing my paper cup of coffee to spill. As I wiped my arm with a handkerchief, I sighed internally, realizing this was going to be a hassle. If this dragged on any longer, it would only cause trouble for Ms. Harrington. I raised my voice slightly, locking eyes with Justin as I spoke. "I don't have time to deal with you. Move out of the way, or this is going to turn into a real problem for you." For a brief moment, the thug stiffened at the change in my demeanor. However, as Justin regained his composure, he suddenly started laughing. It seemed that his lackeys were starting to feel more at ease as well. They clutched their stomachs and let out crude, mocking laughter, joining him in ridiculing us. "A problem, huh? And what exactly do you think is going to happen?" Why don't you enlighten us? I'd say we're the ones who specialize in trouble. With that, Justin grabbed me by the collar. I didn't want this to escalate further, but considering our schedule, it would be best to handle this quickly. I couldn't allow Miss Harrington's company to suffer any losses because of these lowlifes. However, if I were the one to make the first move, it could reflect poorly on the company since I was still on duty. As I was weighing my options and steeling myself for action, the rear passenger door suddenly opened, and Miss Harrington stepped out. Enough! If you don't let go of him right now, I'll call the police. You're really gonna call the cops? You do know who you're messing with, right? You think you can just call the police on the mafia and walk away unscathed? The rear windows of the car were tinted with a special film, making it difficult to see if anyone was inside. Justin and his mafia members had assumed the car was empty, so they were visibly startled when Miss Harrington emerged. And the moment she mentioned police, Justin quickly withdrew his hand from my collar. From his reaction, it was clear that they were indeed a local mafia involved in shady dealings. Getting tangled up with guys like them was the last thing we needed. I straightened my collar, nodded respectfully to Miss Harrington, and gestured for her to return to the car. As I walked back to the driver's seat, I glanced sideways at Justin before settling in and gripping the steering wheel. For a moment, I worried that he might do something reckless like jumping onto the hood of the car, but he merely stood there, staring at me and the vehicle. Seeing that he wasn't making any further moves, I decided it was safe enough to drive away and head to our destination. On the way, I apologized to Miss Harrington for the trouble and for failing to bring her the coffee I had intended. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. If it weren't for your quick thinking, things could have gotten messy. Also, I spilled the coffee. So if you don't mind, I'd like to stop by another convenience store to get you a new one. I had wiped the cup clean with a handkerchief, but there was no way I could offer her something that had been spilled. As I glanced at the GPS to locate the nearest store, Miss Harrington picked up the coffee I had placed in the drink holder and spoke in a bright voice. This coffee is just fine. Thank you. And honestly, I was really impressed by how you stood your ground against those big guys without flinching. Seeing you like that gave me the courage to step out of the car and say what I did. Truth is, I was shaking inside. Miss Harrington was kind and had a strong sense of justice. There was no way she could have just sat back and watched. But the fact that I had put her in a dangerous situation made me feel deeply regretful. Even though it was an unexpected encounter, there would always be ill-mannered people and troublemakers, no matter the location. And as her driver, it was my job to protect her from such threats. From now on, I resolved to be more vigilant, not just with my driving, but with the people around us as well. After safely dropping Miss Harrington off at her destination, I stopped by a nearby gas station to refuel. Today's meeting was more of a preliminary discussion, and I had been told that reviewing the business progress documents wouldn't take more than an hour. To ensure flexibility in case of schedule changes, I remained close by, ready to return to the meeting location when needed. However, as I approached the company's entrance, I was once again met with an unsettling sight. The same mafia thugs from the convenience store were lingering outside the company building. I quickly parked the car and made my way toward the entrance. Justin and his men had already noticed my presence, standing with their arms crossed, glaring in my direction. Well, I never expected to see you again so soon. Were you following us? I had kept an eye on the rearview and side mirrors, but I hadn't noticed them tailing us. Some of them were even sitting on bicycles, which made me assume they were traveling by bicycles or on foot. But now, I suspected they might have just taken someone else's bicycles. Justin smirked ominously and replied, "Come on, you can't blame a guy for being curious." Seeing a fancy car like that, I just had to know where it was headed. And what do you know? It turns out you're making deals with a company big enough that even we've heard of it. I don't know much about your business, but if you're working with a place like this, you must be rolling in cash. With that, Justin stepped closer, pulling a wallet from his pocket.
Listen, I'm a little short on cash right now. How about a little donation?
It'd be in your best interest.
You know, unless you'd rather find out what happens when people don't cooperate.
It seemed that Justin was trying to extort money from me.
But there was no way I was going to give even a single cent to these scumbags.
Even though I felt that way, this was still the premises of a business partner's company.
If I caused trouble here, it would undoubtedly leave a bad impression on Ms. Harrington.
Worse yet, the company might decide not to do business with us if they saw us as the type to employ troublemakers. If I wanted to handle this smoothly, the best course of action would be to call the police, just as Ms. Harrington had done earlier. I reached into my chest pocket to pull out my phone but quickly realized I had made a mistake. I always keep my phone in my jacket's chest pocket when I go outside, but in my haste to get out of the car, I left it behind.
Noticing my reaction, Justin smirked and said, "Did you forget your phone in the car?"
Looks like our righteous hero who saves the weak won't even be able to call the police.
With that, Justin and his group took another step closer, surrounding me. I let out a deep breath and asked them, "Excuse me, but do you have jobs? Doing things like this will only lead to serious trouble later on." When I asked about their professions, Justin and his group exchanged glances and burst out laughing. "Jobs? Let me educate you. This is our job.
We take money from people who look like they have it and use it to fund our drinking, eating,
and setting up our own organization." Justin continued rambling about himself and his group.
Apparently, their previous organization had been dismantled, so now they were trying to start a new one. Recently, this area had been seeing an increase in trouble, and Justin openly admitted that they were the ones extorting people for money. For someone to spill this much information so easily, they must have been low-ranking members in their former group, with no sense of risk management. From our conversation so far, the only thing I had confirmed was that reasoning with them was pointless. I decided to suggest a change of location to avoid escalating the situation here.
"How about we go somewhere else where we can talk more calmly?
If someone sees us and calls the police, it wouldn't be good for you either, right?"
"It's not a bad deal for you." Justin hesitated for a moment.
But then, he slowly shook his head.
"You're just trying to find a chance to run, aren't you?" "I'm not falling for that."
They had the advantage in numbers, surrounding me from all sides.
And yet, was there actually a chance they might let me escape in this situation? If that were the case, their skills must have been embarrassingly low. I sighed in exasperation at Justin and his group while quickly thinking of my next move.
In the end, the situation remained unresolved, and before long, Miss Harrington returned.
"You guys, what are you doing here?"
Seeing Miss Harrington, Justin smirked and asked,
"And who might you be?" "If you tell me, I'll back off for today."
Miss Harrington had her phone pressed against her ear, likely about to call me. Justin must have noticed her phone and realized that she could call the police at any moment. Not wanting to take that risk, he decided to propose a retreat. Miss Harrington pulled out her business card and handed it to Justin, saying,
"You'll just keep following us to our company anyway, won't you? Then let me save you the trouble. I run an IT company. Does that satisfy you?"
Justin took the business card and stared at it intently.
After a moment, he seemed satisfied and said to both of us, "I'll let you off the hook for today. But if we cross paths again, you'd better be ready." With those parting words, Justin walked away, still eyeing Ms. Harrington's business card. For the next few weeks, Justin and his group didn't show up at our company, and I started to relax.
But just when I thought the danger had passed, they suddenly reappeared before us. It happened one evening after work when I was driving Ms. Harrington home. Lately, work had been busy, and she had been staying late. To show her appreciation, she had made a reservation at a high-end restaurant.
After parking in a downtown pay parking lot,
we were heading toward the restaurant when Justin and his group stepped out of a car that had parked behind us.
Noticing them, Ms. Harrington whispered to me, "Hey, Isn't that? Yes.
They're not the type to listen to reason, so let's just ignore them. The odds of running into them here by chance were low. It was more likely they had followed us, but they were using a different car this time, so we hadn't noticed. As Justin and his group approached us, they acted surprised, as if this was just a coincidence.
I never expected to run into you here. How's business going?
His pathetic attempt at acting irritated me even more, but not wanting to get involved, Ms. Harrington and I ignored him and kept walking.
Apparently, Justin didn't like being ignored.
His face turned red, and he ran ahead to block our path.
Hey! Don't ignore me. Looks like you need a little lesson in respect.
His pride had clearly taken a serious hit. He grabbed my arm with a rough grip, his voice louder and more aggressive than before. Now that he had physically grabbed me, ignoring him was no longer an option.
With no choice, I stopped walking.
Justin leaned in menacingly and said,
I did a little research on your company. Seems like you're making a lot of money. You know what I'm getting at, don't you?
We used to be part of one of the biggest organizations in this area. Regaining his composure, Justin flashed his usual smug, ugly grin. Then, he started bragging about the mafia group he had once been a part of. The name of the organization rang a bell. I had heard of it somewhere before.
But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall where.
As I searched my memories, Justin seemed to mistake my silence for fear. His arrogance grew, and he added, "Bring me $10 million and disappear.
Or do you want a first-hand experience of how terrifying the underworld can be?"
At his words, his lackeys closed in, surrounding Ms. Harrington and me.
This must have been their usual tactic, ganging up on people and extorting money. I could feel Ms. Harrington trembling beside me.
Not only were they pathetic for making money this way, but they were also cowards for terrifying a woman. These guys needed to be put in their place and sent somewhere they could be properly rehabilitated.
Justin must have realized I wasn't going to comply.
Rolling his shoulders, he muttered to his group, "Let's take him down all at once." As they closed in, I cracked my neck and stepped forward.
It didn't take long.
They probably thought they were tough, but their fighting skills were no better than schoolyard bullies. I dodged their wide, clumsy punches and struck their vital points, mainly their solar plexuses. One by one, 4 of them went down, leaving only Justin standing.
Hey! What the hell are you guys doing? Get up and fight.
Despite his tough words, his knees were shaking. As I stepped toward him, he instinctively backed away. I cracked my knuckles and said,
"You were talking big about teaching me a lesson. How about showing me what you've got?"
Justin was completely terrified. He turned to run but, in his panic, tripped over his own feet and fell hard.
Scrambling to stand, he suddenly yelled at the top of his lungs, "Samuel! It's you, right? Help me! Some bastard is messing up our turf." Hearing that name, I instinctively widened my eyes.
Samuel looked at me, recognition flashing across his face. Then, with a familiar warmth in his voice, he called my name.
"Henry! It's been a long time. I was wondering what all the commotion was about." "Wait, has this guy been bothering you?" "It's been quite a mess, yeah. But more importantly, Samuel, how have you been?" As Samuel and I exchanged a friendly embrace, Justin gawked in disbelief. "What the hell is going on? Samuel, you know this old man?"
Samuel shot him a sharp look, his presence instantly silencing him.
"Henry is my mentor."
"You don't get to act like a big shot in front of him." As Justin and the others stared in confusion, Samuel began to explain how we knew each other. Before working as Ms. Harrington's driver, I had been a rehabilitation officer in prison.
That was where I met Samuel.
Back then, he had been a high-ranking mafia member who had been sentenced to prison. He had been so unruly that other staff members struggled to handle him. but I had taken it upon myself to teach him discipline, etiquette, and how to function in society. Most of the time, I had been strict with him. But there were moments when I listened to his concerns and helped him work through his anxieties about life after prison. Over time, we developed a strong bond of trust.
Eventually, he completed his sentence and successfully reintegrated into society.
For a while after his release, Samuel had kept in touch with me. But after I left my job at the prison, we had lost contact. When I first left my job at the prison, I had completely lost confidence in myself and didn't feel like keeping in touch with anyone. The real reason I quit was because of an injury to my elbow. As a rehabilitation officer, I had always been strict but compassionate toward inmates.
However, sometimes my intentions weren't understood, and I ended up making enemies. One such inmate, who resented me, attacked me from behind, injuring my elbow. It didn't affect my daily life much, but the fact that I had let my guard down and, more importantly, failed to build trust with that inmate, left a scar on my heart. Feeling unfit to continue in that line of work, I decided to quit. By chance, I was introduced to the job of being Ms. Harrington's driver, which led me to where I am today. I had thought Justin's mention of his organization sounded familiar, but seeing Samuel triggered my memory. It was the same organization Samuel had once been a senior member of. In other words, Justin and his group were once under Samuel's leadership. That organization had since been dismantled, but Justin was now trying to build a new one. When I pointed this out, Samuel's expression hardened, and he spoke in a stern voice. "You're still chasing after that kind of life? It's time to get out of this world. Everyone leaves this life eventually. But when you look back in your final moments, make sure you've lived in a way you can be proud of. Otherwise, what was the point of being born?" Samuel's words seemed to strike a chord with Justin, but at the same time, I could see his inner turmoil. He had come this far, turning back now wouldn't be easy. But no, we're going to make this work. This time, we won't get caught by the cops. Samuel, you should join us and start over together. It seemed Samuel's message didn't fully get through to them. But if they refused to listen, there was nothing more we could do. I looked at Justin and spoke in a calm tone. In that case, you'll just have to enter a facility and go through rehabilitation. Don't worry, people can change. Just like Samuel, you, too, can return to society as a respectable person. The mafia members who had been writhing in pain slowly got back on their feet, gathering around Justin. They had heard everything and were now waiting to see how he would respond. Justin turned to them and ordered, "All of you, go at him again. Take him down this time. Still not giving up, huh?" I let out a sigh and exchanged a glance with Samuel. This counts as self-defense, right? We have to protect Henry, after all. With Samuel now on my side, the fight ended in mere minutes. The two of us quickly took down the mafia members again and then closed in on Justin. Behind him, the flashing red lights of police sirens approached. Miss Harrington muttered, "Finally, they're here." It seemed she had called the police. Damn it! I'm not getting arrested here. You guys, don't say a word to the cops. As Justin tried to escape, I grabbed him and locked his joints in place. Tears welled up in his eyes as he asked me, "Am I going to prison?" "Who knows? You'll be sent to a detention center first, and depending on the investigation, you might end up in prison. It's a great place for people like you." As we spoke, the officers got out of their patrol cars and rushed toward us. After explaining the situation and handing Justin and his group over, we parted ways with Samuel after a brief chat. It was already quite late, but Miss Harrington and I resumed our walk to the restaurant. "I had no idea you had such a background. I've always thought you were reliable. But now I understand it's because you've overcome so much in your life." As she spoke, her hand brushed lightly against my fingertips. That night, we enjoyed a wonderful meal together. Later, I received a call from a police officer thanking me. Apparently, Justin's crimes were surfacing one after another.
He had confessed to embezzlement, fraud, and extortion, meaning he would likely receive a significant prison sentence. For now, he was in a detention center, but even there, he was already complaining and showing signs of weakness. Given the situation, it was almost certain that he would be sent to prison once his charges were confirmed. There, he would face strict guidance, but prison staff genuinely wanted inmates to change for the better. Hopefully, he would come to terms with his crimes and work toward rehabilitation. As for me, I continued working as Ms. Harrington's driver, but one thing had changed.
After that night, we started dating and eventually, we got married.
Today, we had invited Samuel to our home to help with our marriage registration.
It's an honor to be your witness, Henry. Are you sure you want someone like me for this?
Samuel looked uncharacteristically bashful, but Ms. Harrington and I both nodded firmly. From now on, I wouldn't just be her driver, I would be the man who supports her in both work and life. I wanted to be there for her more than ever, to stand by her side as she devoted herself to her career. As I thought about that, I watched Samuel's pen glide across the paper, signing as a witness to our marriage.